Okay, is it going to work? Very upset with himself, and Susan told him, well, we don't have a price yet, so don't get too worked up. So I went back to Patrick and said, have you come up with a price? And he said, yeah, we need 238 million Zim dollars. And I'd been to the bank that day, so I knew the exchange rate. So I divided the $238 million by the exchange rate. Patrick and Jenny Finch were asking for $4,700. And so God provided to the dollar what we needed. And he does that over and over again. And Susan calls her brother to give him the good news. And after she told him, he said, you're lying. You're just trying to make me feel better. But she said, no, you couldn't raise more because we didn't need any more than that. So that's... Well, it's not smoking yet. That's good news. You guys have had your big church fire. I don't think you can afford any more. Your building's beautiful, by the way. It's very, very nice. That doesn't look... And it played fine this afternoon. We had a tremendous answer to prayer at the end of August, and it's part of what we want to share with you tonight. Oh, is it going to work? Do we have sound? Yep, there we go. Okay, here's Ministries in Action. We got through it. Good. The last time we were part of the School of Missions, we were only in that one location in Doma. We have expanded to 2 other locations in the last 3 years. One of them is Koroi, Zimbabwe. Doma is an isolated farming community 65 miles out in the bush. Koroi is a small city of about 20,000 in Hurungwe district. And the reason we got involved there is actually a pretty tragic story. We got a call 2 years ago from the Ministry of Social Welfare to say that they were forcibly closing Hurungwe Children's Home in Koroi because of rampant abuse. They said there's 97 children placed there. They were licensed for 46. And they said, we need you to take 28 of them tomorrow. We had 1 bed open. So we juggled a lot of stuff to get those kids accommodated. And as we have, as we've worked with those kids, we've discovered the magnitude of the tragedy. They were trafficked, they were drugged, they were forced to participate in satanic rituals, they were not fed, they didn't go to school. Everything you could think of had been done to these kids. And they're so damaged at such a deep level, I don't think they'll have a normal day in their lives without Jesus intervening personally. So as we're going around the country, we're asking an army of people, we're trying to assemble an army of people that'll pray for those kids. We'll bring Jesus directly into their lives to be one of our contractors. And so he came along, we started helping him, got him involved in the program, had a dramatic conversion to Jesus, and he's the only orphan who ever came to us and said, you know, I'm really glad I became an orphan because that's the only way I found Jesus. Nobody in my family knows anything about Jesus. So when he got married, his first divine assignment was to go back to the aunts and uncles that abused him after his mother died, win them to Christ, and then he could win the whole region to Christ. And so that's his divine assignment. We had a young man who came to visit as an intern. He said, I can't pay room and board. He'd visited missionaries in 190 countries. But he said, I can do a video for you to promote your ministry. So do we dare try playing the Elijah video? Oh, yeah, right. We'll see what happens. That's where everybody prays, right? Okay. Looks like it's going to do it. I hope the sound is better than...
Kozwai Mose, my name is Elijah, and this is my story.
Not all stories have the perfect beginning. Elijah's certainly didn't. The year was 1995 in rural Zimbabwe. While he was still in the womb, Elijah's father completely rejected and abandoned him. And just 3 short years after being born, Elijah's mother died, and he was put into the care of his aunts and uncles. This wasn't a good thing because his aunts and uncles didn't like him at all. They mistreated, abused, and neglected him. There was many days where he'd be sent out to be with the cattle, spending hours and hours and hours, only to come back after long days to there being little to no food left for him. There was many sleepless nights of going to bed on an empty stomach. Mornings waking up wishing that this nightmare would be over. And at one point, Elijah's aunt was so mad about him that she took his birth certificate and ripped it up and threw it out. Something needed to get a national ID, a job, to have a future. But this wasn't the end of Elijah's story. Because around the age of 10, Elijah was brought to Eden. And at Eden, Elijah experienced real love, care, and support for the very first time. He was poured into for years and years. And after a while, he decided to give his life fully to Christ. He was completely changed. He was able to forgive his uncles. And not only was he able to forgive them, but God called him to go back to the very place, to the very uncles who had mistreated him. and to share the glorious gospel with them, to share the gospel that changed his life, that made him a new creation, and to share it with the surrounding people. That's Elijah's story. This is Eden.
Elijah's story is important because we provide a holistic type of childcare for every child that comes to Eden, and that has many facets. And Elijah's part of the Straight Paths program, which is an evangelism tool we use in the community. It allows us to do outreach in unreached communities here on this plateau we live on. He's part of that team, but the interesting thing is Elijah heads a mission team at Hurungui. And Hurungui is where his uncles live. The uncles that abused him are the ones he's ministering to at Hurungui. And so he runs that mission station very efficiently. He's done very, very well. Other parts of childcare that are important, nutrition has to be optimal. We never know if a child who comes to us is HIV positive or not. Optimal nutrition is their only hope for staying healthy, even with HIV. And so that's an important part of what we do. Our farm produces most of our foodstuffs, probably about 95%, and that is key to the entire program. We also have our own private school, Eden Christian Academy, and that is for remediation. Almost every orphan who comes to us is far behind in school. They need remediation. They need to learn English as a second language. Our goal is for our children to be fully bilingual by the time they finish high school, and so that's an important part of helping these kids achieve. We keep our children until they finish vocational school or university studies if they're willing to go that far. Our medical clinic provides herbal medical care that is very effective, very helpful. We know that the children have health issues often if they have HIV, and so we have nursing staff on staff to be at their disposal at all times. We also do community outreach, which allows us to treat up to 16,000 people a year at no charge at our medical clinic. And that creates tremendous goodwill in the community. We use partnerships with Christians like you to make everything happen for these kids. But we need those partnerships. There are many children like Elijah out there, and they need help. They need help from you, and it's amazing when we invest in the kingdom how God brings fruit out of it. And we just pray that you'll join us and be partners as we help these children.
I get really excited when I look at the handful of young men who've come through our program who now have Masters of Divinity degrees. They're becoming giants in the kingdom. They're doing very effective ministry. They're going to hit their peak when I'm composted in my grave, and I think it's great. What I see in motion is Hebrews chapter 11 is still in play. And that's that beautiful chapter where you have this long laundry list of saints throughout history. They all knew God's promises, but they also understood they wouldn't probably see the fulfillment of all the promises in their lifetime. But they pushed ahead so that the next generation could go farther in the kingdom and farther and farther. And so I get pretty excited about that. Since COVID hit, we have not been out doing fundraising. 2019 was the last time we were out. And one of the fallouts from that is we have taken in more than 50 children who are not sponsored fully. And Susan's going to come tell you how that works. And fortunately, she does not have asthma.
Our child sponsorship program is like many organizations. It's $30 a month. In the 25 years we've been there, we've never changed it. It's always been $25. $30. But one of the things that is a little different than other organizations is that entire $30 goes to the care of that child. We raise the administrative fees and stuff like that separate because we want you to know that $30 really goes to care for your child. You can also pick your child tonight if you wanted to sponsor. Our notebooks out there show the children who still need sponsors. You can also go to our website to sign up, but you won't see these children's pictures there. We're not allowed to post that. But what happens is when you sign up, I then am communicated with to say you have a child sponsor. So then I will write to you to say, did you pick a child at one of our meetings? If not, do you want a boy or girl? Do you have an age preference? And then I get you connected. We welcome sponsors to come and meet their child. It's a life-changing experience for the child, but also for the sponsor. And you would actually eat meals in the home with your child, which is kind of neat because we are in family settings. No two houses are exactly alike, because you've got different house parents in there. So that's really kind of fun. You can write to your child if you want to. You don't have to. But if you do want to write to your child, you would need to email letters to me, and I print them off and give them to the children at school. You cannot just mail us a letter. We will never get it. Letter writing in that culture is, it's not really a part of their culture at all. So we are having to teach them at school how to write letters. And it's kind of fun because every year when I come back, every August, I bring a letter from your child with a new school picture, and then I mail these out to you. And we're always trying to teach the children that, if they're writing to their sponsor and they know this person has been sponsoring them for years, they don't need to reintroduce themselves because that's what they want to do. They want to keep introducing themselves. But we try to explain to them, okay, here's a letter that your sponsor wrote you. How do you write back to a person? And it's, to us, it's very simple, but to them, it makes no sense because it doesn't fit their culture. But they are learning, and I'd encourage you, if you decide to sponsor, keep a notebook and keep those letters and keep those pictures and see through the years how their English improves and just how they grow and mature. If you happen to be sponsoring one of the little ones that can't write their own letter, either their house mom, their social worker, or their teacher will write a letter, and then they will have the child color a picture for you to put on your refrigerator. So it's just a fun thing that we do for the sponsors that they seem to really appreciate. When we have a container coming to us, we let sponsors know. So if you would like to send birthday or Christmas gifts, you can. Again, you don't have to. If you hate shopping, like me, we have ladies in Goshen, Indiana, who will actually do the shopping for sponsors. But everything that comes gets labeled with a number, and that number represents a sponsor and a child. So I know exactly who sent it and who it's going to. And we literally, when the container comes, plug it all into the computer. Everything for a child goes into their tub with their name, so that when they need clothing, I think that's where we look first to see if any came from their sponsors. If you are interested in sponsoring, please be sure and pick up one of these. Take it home, pray over it. We have individuals that sponsor, obviously, but we have churches that pick up kids, Sunday school classes that pick up kids, or Bible study groups. There's lots of possibilities. But if you'll scan this QR code, it will take you straight to our website, and you click on the part that says Impact One Life for Eternity. That's child sponsorship. And eventually, after you put in your payment information, there's a little place that they give you a chance to put the name of the child if you picked the child. If you didn't, or if you missed that part, don't panic, because I'm going to communicate with you anyway, and you can tell me the child that you picked. We also have in the display our nurse, Judy. She's a registered nurse, but she also is the one that knows all the herbal stuff, and she has put together a book of most of her recipes. It's available on Amazon, so if that's something that you're interested in, just take a picture of the book and the ISBN number, and you can order it from Amazon. And then there's also a clipboard back there. If you would like to get our electronic emails, newsletters, please sign up for that. We do not snail mail any newsletters. They only come electronically, and only if you sign up for them. Thank you.
I ask Jesus often what he thinks of what we're doing, and that's the real litmus test. And he often takes me back to Matthew 25 in terms of what we do with children. And in Matthew 25, you got the judgment of the multitudes. Jesus is separating the sheep from the goats. And I never understood that passage of scripture until we had our mini farm in Indiana, and we had both sheep and goats. And sheep are wonderful, compliant little animals. They're not particularly bright. If the dogs are biting them, they hide their face in the corner, and the dogs shred them to pieces. So when we're compared to sheep, it's not necessarily a compliment. Now, goats are terrorists. They do whatever they want to do. You can beat them in the head with anything available, and they'll keep doing what they want to do. Anybody know a goat person? They're the ones that always say, nobody's going to tell me what to do. Anybody know one? When I ask that question, sometimes we get, they point to their spouses. That's not good. We're not going any farther down that road. But Jesus turns to his sheep, the ones who are devoted, the ones who love him, the ones that want to follow him. And this is what he says. You have a special place in my Father's heart. Come and experience the full inheritance of the kingdom realm that has been destined for you from before the foundation of the world. For when you saw me hungry, you fed me. When you found me thirsty, you gave me a drink. When I had no place to stay, you invited me in. And when I was poorly clothed, you covered me. When I was sick, you tenderly cared for me. And when I was in prison, you visited me. And then the godly look to him and say, Jesus, we didn't see you in any of those situations. And the king will answer them, don't you know? When you cared for one of the least of these, my little ones, my true brothers and sisters, you showed your love for me. Now what that means in the African context, you can give clean water to children who are drinking surface water that's absolutely crawling with parasites. You can feed a starving child whose organs are shutting down because they're so malnourished, and you can literally save their lives. You can put clean clothing on a child who comes to us in shredded rags, filthy shredded rags. You can give them a safe place to grow up, and this is a huge thing for AIDS orphans. They do not have any type of security. I mean, there's just no safety net. And you can give them that safe Christian home to grow up in. You can help a terminally ill child finish their race in the best way possible. You can help them not only get the best palliative care that's available, but you can also make them feel safe in that process when they know that Jesus is with them every difficult step in that last journey, and that he's waiting for them when they finally walk through that door. And it's a big deal. But you also rescue children from the prison of animism. Our children are not afraid of their dead relatives. They don't live in terror every day because they have Jesus. And because they have Jesus, they feel safe. They have what they need. It's all good. And so don't ever think that because you sit in a small city in Oklahoma that you do not have impact worldwide. You have huge impact worldwide. You just don't realize how big it is. I want to share one last story. And this is our most powerful answer of prayer in all the years we've done ministry. I want you to understand just how wonderful our King Jesus is. The very first child we took in was Alexandra. She was 10 years old, a rape victim. She had full-blown AIDS, a very, very, very sick little girl. And she was very angry and bitter because she realized her childhood was abnormal, and she knew she was too sick to ever grow up to be an adult, and she was livid, and she had every right to be. We found out her mother was a prostitute, sold her as a 3-year-old. So from 3 to 10, she was abused on a scale you cannot even imagine. I mean, her abuse was worse than the Hurungwe kids. And Susan and I have worked with abused kids for 47 years, and no one came anywhere close to the level of abuse that Alexandra had. And it was no accident that God sent her first, because she was fluent in English and Shona. And so through the course of her illness, she could give us her perspective of what it was like from a child's eyes to die from HIV/AIDS, and it totally changed the way we took care of terminally ill children. And the day she came, we had Alexandra come for lunch, and it was obvious she didn't trust adults, and why would she? Every adult in her life had destroyed her life, and so we thought, we've got to break the ice with this little girl. And so I told Alexandra, I said, I have a dog that can smile. She said, you're a liar. And so I said, well, come with me through the house. We'll go find Shirley the Rottweiler and see if she'll smile for us. And of course, all the way through the house, I'm praying, Lord, please, please, please have the dog at the back door and have her smile like she always does on cue. So we get out the back door. I call the dog, Shirley, can you come? She was right there, came right around the corner. I said, Shirley, can you smile for me? She did her little grimace. Alexandra started laughing. Then she sat down and was petting the dog. And I told her, I will never, ever lie to you. As you get sicker and sicker, I'm not gonna keep the truth from you. I will always tell you the truth. And that broke the ice with her, and she learned to trust us implicitly over time. And her life became a living hell because she had candidiasis, which is a yeast infection that goes all the way through the digestive tract. And eventually it develops ulcers. It's sore. It's like being sore all the way through. And it might take 90 minutes for her to eat a little tiny cup of yogurt with a lot of tears, a lot of choking. It was miserable. And because of the candidiasis, she was leaking diarrhea all the time. She had to be diapered, bathed. It was humiliating. But being touched by another human being radiated pain all the way through her body. And so she was living in an absolute hell. It was like a hamster wheel. It just every day was the same monstrous thing. And we're freaking out. You know, Lord, please, please, please give this child some grace and peace in this dying process. And give us some grace because this is killing us to be a part of this. I can't put in words how impossible it is to watch a little kid die, especially one that's never done anything to anybody. But Alexandra was typical of a lot of AIDS patients. She had a terrible infection on her left arm, and Dr. Guazai said, I want to cut a 1-inch cube out of her arm. We'll get that infection out. We'll pack that with iodine and cotton, and then this is one thing that probably will heal. And so she had that surgery one morning at Maconde Christian Hospital in Mangura. And she and her house mother were waiting outside the hospital, waiting for Susan to come. And they were just going to take Alexandra home for the day, let her rest. It was a traumatic day for her. But while they were standing there waiting for Susan, Alexandra got really excited. Ante Haji, can you see? And Hashpiri said, I don't see anything, Alexandra. What do you see? She said, I see Jesus in the clouds. He's smiling. He says it's okay for me to come home now. And I have to tell you, I know it was a genuine encounter because never again was she ever bitter or angry. She had that peace that passes all understanding. She died 4 weeks later with more grace, peace, and dignity than anyone we've ever been with at death. I want to serve the kind of God who's willing to show up in person if necessary to bring a wounded daughter home safely. That's the God I want to serve. And I think you would agree with me on that one. And this is where we say, Mai Tabaza Shamarwadu, thank you for letting us come. We appreciate it very much. And we'd also say, Famba na Jesu, walk with Jesus, my friends. Now, if we can just take 1 minute, these kids have been really good. We're going to play Guess That Animal. Susan, come on up. Susan will make the noise, and then you guess what animal. Good. Hyena.
Very good.
Very good.
Yeah. Okay. It's a very large animal. No. It's a rhinoceros. They are so big, and I'll never forget the first time we saw them because we heard this little, looking under it. You hear that?
Okay, we'll do just a couple more real quick. And don't say the old preacher named so-and-so, okay? I knew a preacher that laughed like that. What animal? No? Any guesses? That's a hippopotamus. You had it. Okay. Okay, now this next one, you have to really listen closely or you'll miss it. I need to put this down. Okay, any guesses on that one? I'm sorry? Kangaroo. No, we don't have kangaroos in Africa. Okay, we won't take a bit more time. That's a baboon. The male baboons are called dog baboons because they bark, but they also have larger canine teeth than a lion. So they're very dangerous. So now I'll hand the chaos over to you, Ben.
I was just going to see if anybody had any questions that they wanted to ask before we pack up for the night. One question go ahead, Lainey.
We started our marriage in group foster care, and by the time we were 27, we had worked with over 150 emotionally disturbed children who had been removed from their families and were probably never ever going back. So we were very familiar with what kids went through when mom and dad were out of the picture. We did that for several years. We did careers for 15 years. I was a registered landscape architect. Susan was a school teacher. I went to Zimbabwe on a business trip to do a master plan for a missionary. And everywhere I went, there were orphans in my way, and I realized there was no safety net. But God did one other really weird thing. That was back when we had the old airport in Harare. The 747 pulls up near the immigration building. They wheel a set of stairs up. You walk down, and then you walk on the runway into the immigration building. And just pray it's not raining that day. But when my feet hit the ground, I had this overwhelming sensation that I had been away from home for a very, very long time, and I was finally home. And I said, Lord, this is weird because I've never been in Africa in my life and never had any attraction to Africa, but I think he knew how much we would love this place.
One question I had, you mentioned, how regularly you see kids coming in with HIV and other things, and we hear about the AIDS pandemic in Africa and how, just rough ballpark, how many people that you deal with in the clinic or in the children's home, how many come in, like percentage wise, would you say have HIV?
In the early 2000s, the infection rate was 85% of everyone around us had HIV/AIDS.
Wow.
And a staggering number of them died before the ARV drugs were made available. Now the infection rate is about 25%. With our children, it's about 9%. Yeah, and everyone in the country has free access to the antiretroviral drugs, and once you're on those, if they work for you, it makes life completely normal. I think they do at some level, not in Zimbabwe. We have pariah state status, so a lot of those things get passed by. But the certification is worldwide, and we take part in that. There's no. Well, what Zimbabwe is just in the last 3 years started computerizing everything. So our kids are actually in a very unique position to go to an employer and say, I can do data processing, I can do spreadsheets, I can do pivot tables, I can do a database if you need one. And people are snatching people up who can do that because it's not been part of the culture until just now. Yeah. So we're always trying to create advantage for our kids, just like you would with your kids. Yeah. Any other questions before we close?
Just kind of a thing I've heard before. In the villages and stuff that you're working with, how prevalent would, I don't know, I heard somebody say years ago that, there are places out there that will never know a landline or telephone or electrical stuff is hard to get out there, but you go out there and everybody's got a cell phone.
It's the way it is, yeah.
Is that the kind of the way it is?
Now, when we got there,
electricity may or may not be there, but they'll have a cell phone that they can communicate
with. The power's
with.
there about half the time, but Everybody has a cell phone. It revolutionized the way Africans do everything. It revolutionized their businesses, but part of the culture there is if you have employment, you're obligated to help anyone in the family who cannot find employment to support them. And so they used to have to cash their check, get on a bus, take it across country to their relative, hand their money to the relative, and then take the bus back, and that's expensive. Now they can send the money on their cell phones. They absolutely love it. Yeah. Oh yeah, oh yeah. Yeah, yeah. And sometimes people donate things that aren't appropriate, but we always shred those and make pillow stuffing out of those. Or sometimes, if it's a T-shirt, you cut out the offensive part and then you make training pants for potty training. So, yeah, what happens when you marry someone that can sew anything? Yes. Yeah, Susan and I both grew up in Indiana. She grew up in the southern part of the state in Paoli, near Louisville, Kentucky. And then I grew up in Syracuse, Indiana, which is way north, about 15 miles from the Michigan line. I grew up in a lake resort community. It was fun. We were raising our boys in Goshen. Yeah, yeah. Yeah.
All right.
It's a
All right.
reunion.
Yeah. Well, let me say a prayer for Kevin and Susan, and then I'm sure there's some merchandise or at least some cards and things. I've just been encouraging everybody to take something with the name of the ministry on it, so to remind you to pray for them throughout the year. Okay, I wasn't sure if you were out yet or not, but as always, we're going to take up an offering throughout School of Missions, and we're just going to send one check to School of Missions, and they're going to go. So if I don't, so be praying about what you can give to help support all of these missions. They all get an equal cut of what the money that is collected from all the various churches, and so be praying about what you can give to support. I know some of you have already given, and that's awesome, and we've already got a pretty good collection going, so I'm excited about that. But let me say a prayer for you and your ministry, and then we can go back and talk some more. Father God, I thank you for what you are doing in Zimbabwe through Eden Ministries. I pray for Kevin and Susan, just as they travel around to the various churches that have been supporting them for years, that you would just encourage them, that you would encourage those churches that have been helping them. I thank you for their participation in School of Missions this year, so that we who have never heard of this ministry can be encouraged by what you are doing, and that we could do a little bit to support them as well. Father, I just pray that you would continue to work in these lives that come here, that they might hear about you, that they might learn that they don't have to fear, because they have a great God who is on their side. And so, Father, I thank you for people who are willing to go and to tell them that good news. And I pray that you would just bless their ministry and bless them. In Jesus' name we pray. Amen.